Hey YouTube, Kira Qualia here, bringing you all my Cardfight Vanguard Overdress Eugene Dragon Empire deck profile for post A Brush with the Legends. With the latest booster set, we were given pretty good support to support what I would say was definitely the most underwhelming deck from the first booster set, Genesis of the Five Greats. I really wanted this deck to be good. I'm a huge fan of the Dragon Empire nation, so having more support to make this deck consistent with what it's supposed to do is basically just retire a bunch of your opponent's rear guards, making your own rear guard stronger in the process. And with what we had mixed in with what we get from the newest A Brush with the Legends booster set, I definitely would say we've got a more consistent deck than what we had from the previous set, which is what anyone can ask for with any support that we get from new and upcoming sets. And I hope that just continues to happen with the more and more Eugene support we get. So let's go ahead and get started with the deck profile. So for the ride deck, our starter is Double Gun of Duststorm Bart, just the standard when wrote upon. If you went second, draw a card. For the grade 1, we are running Gunning of the Duststorm Nigel. When this unit is wrote upon by Cataclysmic Bullet of Duststorm Randor, you soul charge 1. And the soul is a very important part of Eugene's skill, so having that soul build up early game definitely does come in handy. And when your opponent's rear guard is retired during your main phase, +1, retire this unit, and choose one of your opponent's rear guards and retire it. We really don't use any other copies of Nigel in the deck, so there's really no reason for the additional rear guard power that this card can provide. For the retire, we have a lot more better cards from set 2 to use. The same with the Cataclysmic Bullet of Duststorm Randor, only running the copy in the ride deck with this one. Also, when this unit is wrote upon by Heavy Artillery of Duststorm Eugene, draw a card, choose up to one card from your drop zone, and put it into your soul. So even if Nigel is in the drop zone, you can put it just back into the soul. That's really the only use we would ever use for the soul blasting of Nigel, but it'll be still in the soul when you have this build up into your main go-to grade 3 ride target, which is Heavy Artillery of Duststorm Eugene. Having the Vanguard skill of rest 2 rear guards, choose one of your opponent's rear guards and retire it, and this unit gets plus 10,000 till end of turn. And that retire will definitely come in handy, and why we're running additional copies of this card, not only for just the Persona ride, but for the initial pressure of building up more soul with this card. On the Vanguard circle, once per turn, if your opponent's rear guard was retired this turn, Soul Blast 5, look at the same number of cards from the top of your deck up to the number of your opponent's open rear guard circles, and choose any number of cards from among them, call them to rear, and put the rest into your soul. So with this, you could build up the soul potentially more. The biggest risk is obviously revealing triggers, because then they would go into the soul most of the time, but still taking away from the potential strong drive check you could have with this card. But we have plenty of cards in this deck to add with building soul up, and also just retiring your opponent's cards consistently with set 2 support. So having this card as our main go-to grade 3 ride target, with our backup grade 3 still being from set 1, and that is Penetrate Dragon Trabosh. When your Vanguard attacks, if your opponent has 2 or less rear guards, put this unit into your soul, choose one of your Vanguards, and it gets critical +1 till end of that battle. So that's the pressure that you need with Eugene. You can hit big numbers with the Persona rides, the triggers, and his own skill, but that extra trigger that Trabosh provides is definitely needed in the deck, and why we're running 4 copies of this card, because not only that, you don't retire Trabosh, you put it into the soul, so that can build up more soul that you need for Eugene and a bunch of other cards that we're running in the deck all together. For this just means extra pressure. If you go first, you have that rush that your opponent may not have called any rear guards, so you don't even have to rely on retiring with Eugene or other cards yet. You can just call out Trabosh, attack with it, and then put into the soul when your Eugene attacks for that extra critical pressure, along with the basic fact that you can get a critical trigger off your drive check as well. So that'd be 3 damage your opponent's taking right then and there. That is it for the grade 3s. Moving on now to the grade 2s. I'm running 4 Strong Fortress Dragon, Brachio, I believe is how you pronounce it. On Rearguard, if your Vanguard is Heavy Artillery of Duststorm Eugene, you Soul Blast 1 and rest this unit. Choose one of your opponent's rear guards and retire it. So it takes away from the soul for Eugene, but you have plenty of other ways to build it up, like I said. And this card helps to retire. And if you retire something in that turn, you can help to trigger Eugene's second skill without having to rest any other rear guards. And what's great about Strong Fortress Dragon, Brachio, if you, at the beginning of the battle phase, if your opponent has 1 or less rear guards, you can stand this unit and it gets plus 5,000 to end of turn. So even if you rest it with Eugene, you can again restand it to have be one of the cards to attack into your opponent. That's why I like running 4 of this card. It's just immense pressure, meant to do what the whole deck is meant to do. Be rest fodder, but also retire pressure against your opponent, and easy ways to restand, making use of a card that you rested for your own use to then attack into your opponent. And then for the last of the grade 2s, the biggest focus in the deck will be the grade 1 ride lineup. But I'm also running 3 of the Stealth Rogue of Iron Blade Oshikuni. Now, on the Rearguard, when this unit attacks, if your opponent has 2 or less Rearguards, this unit gets plus 5,000 till end of battle. You have other retire cards, which we'll get to in just a bit. You really didn't need many of the Counterblast or Soul Blast retiring ones. You just needed more attack pressure, and that's where Oshikuni comes in. And I only run 3 of it because I wanted to focus more of my numbers with the grade 1 lineup, like I said, with some of our bigger pressure being our Gibra Brachio, being able to basically have this pressure along with the retire power. You just have an extra bonus with Oshikuni, having the less rear guards that your opponent may have, being able to attack for some bigger numbers. And if you get a Persona Ride or another trigger, just adding on to that power. That is it for the grade 2s. Moving on now to the grade 1s. One of the best grade 1s we got for the deck is Drag Gritter Edurus. On Rearguard, if your opponent's Rearguard was retired this turn, Counterblast 1, and perform one of the following. This unit gets plus 10,000 until end of turn, or put this unit into your soul, choose one of your opponent's grade 2 or greater Rearguards, and retire it. Now, most of the time, you'll have the pressure with this card as a boost power with the plus 10, but I want to use the put into soul, choose one of your opponent's Rearguards, because not only will it build up the soul for Eugene, but it'll also retire a Rearguard, giving you that soul that you may need just to basically use Eugene altogether. That's why I'm running 4 of this card, so you can hit those numbers quite easily. And also, it takes up a Counterblast, which you have plenty to use in this deck since Eugene just uses soul, and your Counterblast will be used for this and very, not too many other things. You can rely on this and maybe one other card for the majority of all your Counterblasts in the deck altogether. For the next grade 1, I'm also running 4 of the Stealth Fiend Shigama Mango. With this one, when your opponent's Rearguard is retired during your main phase, retire this unit. Look at the top card of your deck, and you may call a unit from among them to rear if you did not put into your soul. So whether it provides soul power, if it's not an ideal card to call to rear, like a trigger, it can go into the soul and then just help to power up Eugene to get you more cards in your soul and onto the field. 4 of this is a definite need in the deck, just so you have all of that set up ready to go. So with this, it is a retire, sadly. If it was put into soul, I would say this card would be definitely amazing in the deck. It still is very, very awesome for your setup, just giving you more important cards to either set up into the soul. But once again, it would be just an additional soul power and an additional plus if it did go into the soul, but sadly it does not. With the other grade 1s, a few lower numbers, but I'm running 2 Stealth Dragon Kizarenji. On Rearguard, once per turn, you can Counterblast 1 and Soul Blast 1, choose one of your opponent's Rearguards in the same column as this unit, and retire it. So it's a once per turn, meaning if it's still on the field next turn, you can use the skill again, as long as you have the Counterblast and Soul Blast to use, and it has to be something in the same column. So if you put it behind your Vanguard, it has to be that Rearguard in that column, but best of time it is when it's in one of the other additional Rearguards, because then you can just have it set up there for that play. And then the last of the grade 1s that I run in the deck is just 2 Stealth Dragon Tokushirashi. When this unit is discarded from hand during your turn, you may put this unit into your soul. So with this card being paid for the cost for the ride deck, if you discard this card for the ride deck, you can then put it into the soul, then giving you more soul buildup. Also just, qualifying for the card cost for discarding to choose a card from your ride deck and ride it. Very, very useful because it will provide for the main point of the deck along with the purpose of the ride deck altogether. And then for the last of the actual grade 1s, I might have said it was the last one, but we still have the Sentinel, and that one is the Twin Buckler Dragon, having the same skill as all the other Sentinels. If let's say you have the 2 in hand, if you were to guard with the 1, since you just have 1 or less cards in your hand, you don't have to discard for this Sentinel. So if your opponent gets an over trigger, you can block the Vanguard attack, and if they give it to Rearguard, you still have that 1 last Sentinel to block that attack, which will definitely come in handy if you're at 5 damage and your opponent's unit is attacking for 100 million, or worse, you're at 4 damage and that unit also has an additional critical along with the 100 million power provided by the over trigger. And then for the trigger lineup in the deck, for the pressure along with Trabosh and just the power that Eugene can provide, we're running 7 criticals, so 4 Conduct Spark Dragon and 3 Blaze Maiden Zone. The ratio really doesn't matter, it's just player preference, but I still like the 7 of the critical trigger because for the other trigger lineup, more pressure with the rearguard attacks. Also, we're running 4 of the Blaze Maiden Parama. It also has the, if your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, this unit gets plus 5,000 power, so additional shield power even if your opponent went first and they're at grade 3. 3, you can guard your grade 2 unit. Having this card reach additional strength for basically 30,000 shield, so whether you need to block a rearguard, this could just be the one-of card you need for it. I also run the 4 heal trigger, which this one being more of a retired deck and having a lot of Tachikaze-like cards, I felt White Light Dragon Parasolus, once again, the most fitting heal trigger for this deck. And the last card being the over trigger, which is Dragon Deity King of Resurgence, Drag Veda. For the restand power, if you can restand Eugene, that in any deck is just enough pressure to do another drive check and preserve you cards in your hand, along with the 100 million power that this card can give. But that is it for the deck profile. I hope you all enjoyed the video. As always, I'm very excited to be basically finishing up with the majority of the decks from the Brush with the Legends booster set for all the deck profiles. I might even be coming around to the point where I've, done enough practice with a lot of them to even give some updates to some of the ones that I began with the Brush with the Legends set, even though we only have so few cards in the actual set to work with. But as always, until next time, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. And Kira Qualia out.